Well, hello to everyone, and welcome to the Digital Front Door. I'm Scott Benedict. The rise of e-commerce, omnichannel, and the overwhelming amount of data available to retailers and to their suppliers has created a number of challenges and perhaps opportunities for professionals throughout the ecosystem of modern retail on how to best manage their business and to grow their business in the digital age. Nowhere is that rapid pace of change more evident than here in Northwest Arkansas, where supplier teams tasked with working with Walmart and Sam's Club are now challenged with gaining business insights from powerful new tools like Walmart's Illuminate platform, managing sales and assortment decisions and strategies across stores, clubs, and online, and marketing their products through digital platforms like Walmart Connect and Sam's Club's member access platform or MAP. In such a dynamic and fast-paced environment, it would seem that the attributes and the capabilities of the ideal high-performing supplier team would be changing and perhaps being redefined every day. So I thought the perfect person to learn more about this topic might be someone whose whole professional focus is on providing high-quality candidates to the top supplier teams in our industry. And so I turned to Scott Crossett, who is the CEO of Cameron Smith and Associates here in Northwest Arkansas. And Scott, welcome. And we're so happy to have you join us today.
Thank you, Scott. I'm an advocate, reader, viewer, work, and business journals and things you've been in for many years. So it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I thought we might kind of start our conversation today and talk a little bit about the broader context of how you would view the employment environment here throughout Northwest Arkansas for Walmart and Sam's Club supplier teams. What are some of the key things that you're seeing out there in the market?
I'll tell you in one word, it's a very competitive market. I guess competitive will be the one word. So right now we have a 1.4% unemployment rate in Benton County.
Unbelievably low.
And I think the unemployment rate in the Walmart supplier community is probably lower than that.
Wow.
And so the need for talent in a very competitive market is absolutely there. Companies are valuing and putting a high priority over hiring the best, and they know the impact that they have on the business when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars of sales. So right. It's everybody wants the best, the cream of the crop, and so it's a fight. And despite Walmart laid off, I think, 400 employees a couple days ago, and I think that's probably more of a trying to find the right organizational mix for their new headquarters and still doing some realignment, although they haven't said directly all the reasons and whys yet. So beyond that, it's a really good market, but with the caveat that if companies are not adding headcount and employees are staying in their positions longer, which we're seeing a little bit of, if you're an active candidate trying to find work, it can still be kind of difficult because they're so specific in what they're looking for, and because there's not quite as much turn, and people, companies are trying to retain their talent at a much higher clip than they were 2-3 years ago. So there's been inflation. 2022 and 2023, we saw more inflation than you could ever imagine, especially with candidates between 1 and 10 years, kind of the entry level to mid-level candidates. It was massive increases that you'd have to offer in salaries just to get people to come over and change jobs. That has slowed down a little bit, but it's still a little bit going too. But I think 2024, I think it's kind of starting to get a little bit
level out,
closer to where it should be.
Gotcha, makes sense. So, what are some of the common challenges you hear from the companies that you're doing searches for, or maybe even the candidates themselves? Are there any kind of recurring themes in terms of how they support their business with Walmart and Sam's Club?
Yeah, I always find it interesting to talk channel strategy with candidates or hiring managers and understand how do you allocate different products to this retailer or that retailer, or give somebody something special. Right. Of course, Walmart's got a lot of leverage, and they tend to get the best. And how do you do that across your different retailers and be fair to everyone and continue growing with everyone? And that's right now, I think a large part of the conversations, if and it kind of depends on what type of product line that the company is to what their challenges might be. Yeah. So, for example, an apparel supplier or a general merchandise supplier may be dealing with nearshoring issues or diversification of their manufacturing or some new sustainability initiatives that are being put out there that are kind of new and advanced for them to bite off. And so those are some of the challenges that type of product line might have. Mm-hmm. Whereas food or consumables, let's say, may be dealing with inflation or OTIF situations or Illuminate, which they're a little bit more expected to buy into the charter version, I think, especially some of the bigger food and consumable suppliers. So, there's a lot of different levers. Private label, for example. Right. So Walmart is pulling on the suppliers in a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. And so I think some are really good initiatives. I think they're probably all really good initiatives. But when you start putting them collectively onto the companies, I think that there's some stressors. And so I think that it's going to be important that, as I think about some of the challenges that the companies have, it's trying to find where them and the Walmart team fit in with the overall company strategy. Right. For the last 10 or 15 years, I think there's been a lot of confidence in working with Walmart that you can grow your business. I think now that margins are being squeezed, I think that there's a little bit more of a sentiment of, hey, this is kind of going in a different direction maybe, and hopefully that they'll all get together and make sure it's a long-term approach versus transactional approach. So because when the suppliers have confidence, mm-hmm. they invest in the business, they invest in employees, and they try to grow. But when they start losing confidence, or you put too many things competing for their confidence, such as, hey, you're a private label, you got to do this, or you come down with profit, your margins are going to come down. I think they start to kind of look around, or headquarters kind of starts battling back against their Walmart teams. Right. And so seeing a little bit of that right now as I talk to candidates.
That makes sense. And it kind of leads to my next question is what are some of the perhaps common attributes or skill sets or competencies that you see in maybe some of the best or higher performing supplier teams that call on Walmart? What are those common elements, perhaps?
Okay. Well, it really comes down to what your team structure is. And the bigger supplier you are with Walmart, the higher the expectations are for what you're going to provide to them and the resources that you give them. So, for example, everyone has a sales team, mm-hmm. or sales representation, sales and analytics, and you've got category management, and then mm-hmm. you've got supply chain. Finance and marketing are here, but in a lesser degree. A lot of it's at headquarters. Right. Probably the top 25 or 30 largest suppliers have some type of finance and marketing presence here, but a lot of those roles are headquarters, or they're allocated to third party to help manage and support. Gotcha. So you've got retail operations teams that may be doing, they may have a direct team, or they may have that outsourced to a third party broker, which is the case in a lot of situations. And so if you're really one of the tier one largest suppliers to a Walmart, you've got every one of those positions. And some of the teams have over 100 people. I think there's a handful of teams that have over 100 people supporting the Walmart business. So there's some big ones. And so where are you on the scale of large to small? Kind of it stems down to what resources you're expected to have, or what you should have, or what makes you the most competitive. Right. And the smaller companies don't have quite the expectations mm-hmm. that the larger companies do. They don't have to have quite the category support. It's not as complicated a business. And then from a headcount standpoint, it's more dictated based on your volume of business and SKU count, which I think SKU count is probably more important, as well as how many categories are you in, how many different buyers are you dealing with. Those two factors.
Who do you have to interact with?
Those two factors. That really is how demanding is the job. How many different product lines do you have? How many different areas are you trying to compete or get into? And so,
well, beyond, and the structure thing makes sense, but I know that in the last few years with buying for online, moving back here from San Bruno to the local market, has that changed maybe some of the aspects of great high performing teams having to have knowledge of digital as well as physical retail?
Absolutely. I mean, the teams are trying to create a digital environment that replicates the in-store experience. They want it to be the same to the best that they can. And so that requires a lot of attention. It does require e-commerce experience and expertise. It's an evolution. For a while, there's not been necessarily a big enough responsibility to say, okay, here, take it and go. It's each teammate's picked up little bits and chunks and little pieces of things to do. Gotcha. They've learned new skill sets. And then, now we're to a place where we've got this job figured out. We're going to have an e-commerce manager. And it took a long time to get there. And now some teams have e-commerce people here dedicated to Walmart. Some did have it, and now it's a headquarter position. Now it's kind of back and forth. But we've made a number of placements for e-commerce managers. But it's still being determined what that position is and how strategic is it, or is it more of a kind of a tactical role where you're trying to get everything set up and you're trying to get the little things. You're not usually negotiating price or things. So it's, well, as an account manager, it's really kind of a digital position and working with Walmart Connect and kind of aligning marketing. And so but it's also a position that a lot of companies use across multiple retailers and not necessarily just dedicated to Walmart.
Gotcha.
While there are those that are dedicated to Walmart, it's maybe
it varies.
Yeah,
perhaps?
I would maybe 20% or less are probably Walmart dedicated.
Gotcha. Well, I know that as a company, CSA, while much of your business is supporting hiring for Walmart and Sam's Club teams, I know that you support other retailers' supplier teams as well. In the course of that business, do you see major differences between what Walmart and Sam's Club teams need or are looking for from a skill set when compared to what other retailers' supplier teams? Is it different, similar? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think the Walmart teams are the best practice teams from a scale, from the things they require, from the speed at which you have to do things. I mean, Walmart's a innovative company. They ask a lot more. They're the first to ask more. They're first to push initiatives, and then a lot of other retailers follow. And so your Walmart team, it's the most important from a visibility standpoint, from a profitability, from a lot of different ways. It has to be your best in-class team. It has to set the example for your Target team or your Kroger team or your other account team. So companies are putting the resources into it. I think Walmart is more ingrained throughout a company's entire organization, headquarters or locally, within marketing, within finance, within supply chain, than they would be with other retailers in general. And so that's a good thing. They're there, they're working, they're showing you how to do it and what they need. It does require a lot of communication. And Walmart does tend to have its dedicated people, where some of the other accounts tend to be, okay, here's your Southeast region. Okay, it falls, got Publix falls into it, and maybe some other grocers, or you've got H-E-B, where you might have the club channels.
Gotcha.
So the team structures are a little bit different in that way. Walmart tends to be the first with price increases for inflation, or maybe a new innovation or a new product. So sometimes that's a good thing, and other times the other retailers use that, to be the second mover and see how it goes for somebody else. Sometimes a good strategy in itself.
Right.
And from a team standpoint, if a Walmart team is the first mover and putting stuff out, then the second mover gets to kind of imitate some of the things the first mover does. Gotcha. And so I would say that the Walmart teams being best in class can help the other teams be really good on their accounts as well. And so I know there's probably some Walmart bias in that comment, but we do work with all retailers, so I did get to see how the other ones operate.
Yeah, and I imagine that's pretty interesting, particularly from the perspective of what you and your team do. And a minute ago, you touched a little bit on online and omni-channel, and I'm curious. I'd like to go a little bit deeper. With that kind of evolution is top of mind, both on Walmart's part and with a lot of consumer brands. What are you seeing in terms of what suppliers are looking for in terms of maybe new roles, new skills, new trends in hiring the community? You touched on it a little bit, but I want to go deeper and see, because of the emphasis that is being placed on omni-channel, are you seeing some differences either in what are the skill sets that employers are looking for on supplier teams, or maybe new roles? Can you dive a little deeper on that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, omni-channel has some different pressure points as you're trying to give the shopper a different experience or know where the revenues are coming from. Right. So Illuminate, I know, has been a new thing, and people are still trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out what version of Illuminate do we need? How do we use it? We have had a lot of category insights needs where companies are wanting to maybe upgrade their team, add to their team, know somebody, find somebody who has this type of experience. It's worked with Charter, for example.
Right.
It's new. There's not that many people that do have that. Everybody's kind of figuring it out together.
Yeah.
So there's a demand for that, and so those skills and knowing Illuminate is probably the biggest thing we've seen recently.
Yeah.
When Walmart had some new OTIF initiatives, we saw a lot of supply chain positions and a lot of wanting to maybe add some support or it became a higher priority. And so the same thing is going on right now with Illuminate. The e-commerce roles are absolutely necessary and growing. It's not as fast as you think. Mm-hmm. I think artificial intelligence is going to be very impactful for marketing, and I think there's going to be some really an emphasis on shopper marketing positions. But currently, the costs of Illuminate are coming out of the same bucket. A lot of the third-party expenditures, and I think it's coming out of that P&L. And I think that we've seen a little bit of a slowdown in marketing roles.
Okay.
And the only thing I can attest that to is it's they're spending their money somewhere else right now. Right. But I think that as artificial intelligence gets more involved, I think that there's going to be some really big shopper marketing opportunities and some pretty cool stuff that people can do with Walmart Connect.
Well, that's interesting, and I've heard that from several folks in the community that Illuminate does change the skill sets and the capabilities that people are looking for because it unlocks even more data than perhaps what we were used to with Retail Link and DSS all these years. That's been around for 20 and 30 years, but I'm curious if you have a candidate sitting across from you that wants to make sure that they're investing in their own skill set so that they can be successful in the future. What are maybe some of the skills that you would counsel a candidate who wants to be successful in this supplier community to make sure that they're garnering not only to be successful here, but perhaps to be successful throughout CPG or throughout retail? How do you counsel them?
Well, I mean, I think you always have to be learning and staying in the know of what's going on. You've got to know what the other retailers are doing. You've got to know what Walmart's doing. You've got to know the trends, and you got to be able to speak to it.
Kind of have to be a student of retail, sounds like.
Always, yeah. Learn some of the new skills. Go out and learn ChatGPT. Learn anything that you can so that you don't become dated and somebody else can move in front of you. Additionally, depending on where you are in your career, there's a lot of people that they have a goal in mind of where they want to get to. Right. And when they get that in their mind, that's all they think about. Well, if you go from here to here too quickly and you skip some of the steps in between, it's a quicker path to that career, but you end up missing out on maybe some analytical skills or some of the other things that make you well-rounded.
Right.
And I think with some younger generations, I'm just advise them to make sure they learn the skills and the job they've got and don't try to skip steps. Because if you get to the wrong position and you don't have the analytical foundation, for example, you got there quicker, but you're limited in the next step, and it'll start to be. So don't always look to advance too fast. Know where the right time is to take that next step and that next move. But always be learning is probably the suggestion.
I recall being told by an HR leader when I was still within Walmart and Sam's that the first thing you want to do is bloom where you're planted. And I thought it was a good metaphor for getting every bit of learning out of the role that you have before you worry about the next role. It sounds like you're of a similar mind in that regard.
I'm just seeing people that are in good positions, but they're limited because they're lacking a certain piece of it or certain exposure to it. It could be management. It could be a lot of different
managing people and different things, soft skills, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, that leads to something, and I've talked offline about this before, knowing that I stepped out of the industry for a while and I was in academia, and I know that there's a role that academia plays in preparing future leaders, future candidates for for role in retailing. And I'm curious what your perspective is on the role of the academic community in kind of understanding where our industry is headed and preparing future leaders for that. And is there kind of the interaction between academia and the industry in kind of formulating what are those skills and capabilities that are going to be needed down the road?
Academia can play a major part in the advancement and preparedness of people coming out of college, or just podcasts like this is a form of that as well for people who are already out in the world and doing it, just to try to stay involved and listen and know what's going on. But I see as I see the Walton College, they've got a fantastic business school, and they seem to be getting more and more specialized and teaching it. I don't think there ever will be a day where a student comes out and they're ready to hit the ground running. Right. And there's always going to need to be a lot of in-seat exposure and experience, and they won't be able to connect the dots to, okay, what am I learning versus what do you do when you do that? Right. I went to college in finance and was going to be a stockbroker, got my first job. Thought I was going to pick stocks and mutual funds. They tell me go knock on doors and meet people and sell. So I came out not prepared, not really knowing what the job was. I think right now these people come out, they know they've done some of it, they just hadn't done it on real life situations like they will, or had a dialogue, or have somebody push back, or the negotiations, and so I think that I could see a world where there's like CPG trade schools where it's kind of like being a plumber or an electrician, where you go in, you have that mindset, and you get real deep into it, knowing that that's the path that you go, and then you get out and go. So I think that academia will play a large role, but that's the direction I've seen stuff go as far as looking at University of Arkansas and specifically.
Interesting. So you mentioned earlier kind of this evolution of roles that are on teams based here that are Walmart and Sam's Club specific teams versus headquarter roles. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on that. Are you seeing any kind of recurring themes of, I think you mentioned finance was one of them, but things that have remained as headquarters roles versus things that are perhaps part of the Walmart and the Sam's Club account-specific team? What are you seeing beyond perhaps that finance example?
Finance and marketing are typically and more generally handled at the headquarters. E-commerce is still there because they're working on numerous other accounts.
Across retailers.
Across other retailers. Yeah. And, I would say a trend is somewhat relevant to this, but Sam's Club, we've had more conversations with vice presidents of sales or people that they're trying to decide, is Sam's Club belong with Walmart, or does Sam's Club belong in the club channel? Right. And I'd still say 90% are Walmart and Sam's Club teams, but I've seen a few companies that have decided, well, they operate more like a BJ's or a Costco. Right. Costco can be kind of a demanding account. They've got various different buying hubs. Right. And so there's a lot entailed sometimes depending on your product and dealing business with Costco. But I've seen where they, that bulk type thing, they're putting the Costco and the club and Sam's Club and BJ's together and maybe sliding some of that outside of Walmart, which is a kind of an interesting trend that might happen. Indeed.
And I will tell you my experience as a buyer is I saw something similar where the person who would call on me was a club-specific person, or it might be the same person who called on my colleagues at Walmart. And if it sounds like that hasn't changed, depends on the brand, on the supplier, and what's their overall structure. Is that a fair statement?
I think once you get to a certain level, I don't think Walmart really wants the same person calling on Walmart that calls on Target. Right. And that again, it's companies have to get to a certain size where that's a factor. Right. But that becomes a little bit of a conflict. Now, while all those conversations happen at headquarters and back and forth, it's not like a category advisor wall, but I do think that they want some separation from their biggest competitors on the product at some point. And so each company has to decide what level is it in small and mid-sized companies, separate that out. But that's it's not common for somebody to call on Walmart and a lot of other accounts.
Gotcha.
You're doing more than $10 or $15 million in sales.
It's big enough and challenging enough that they probably want a dedicated person, is kind of what you're saying, right?
Correct, yeah.
So beyond kind of team structure and some of those things and breadth of responsibility, are there skill sets or competencies that you see hiring managers looking for here for Walmart and Sam's Club teams that are very different than perhaps how they're hiring for other retail teams? Is it similar? Is it different? What are you seeing there in terms of the competencies or the skill sets that employers on those teams are looking for these days?
I think that they're going to be the same skill sets. They're going to want somebody that's a strong communicator.
Right.
They're going to want somebody that's analytical and can read the numbers. And they're going to want somebody that works well within a team and can work cross-functionally.
Okay.
They want somebody that can listen but negotiate, somebody that can work within the pinch, because you're getting pinched by your retailer who wants this, you're pinched by your headquarters that wants this, you want to deliver to both as a supplier, but it's hard to make everybody happy. In fact, you can't, but you try to. You're just kind of, it's a lot of pressure, and it's not for everybody. I can't tell you how many times people get into it because it's the job they think they want. Okay, some of them can pay well, it's got a good career path at times, but you get in, it's like, hey, this is a lot. It's this isn't just a 9 to 5 position. It's not just Monday through Friday position. You're responding to emails. You've got calls. It's you want to play in the big leagues. Here you go. And it's
you have to dedicate
the largest account in the world. If Walmart's and Target's and Kroger's, it's not a small gas station chain. It's and a lot of times people start off and just like, okay, here you go. Here's a $500 million business, $100 million business. You're involved with it, and in other markets. If you're in Charlotte or you're in, wherever you
Chicago,
just any other town, you're probably going to start off on a small account and earn your wings.
Right.
And here, a lot of times, people start in this profession at the start top account. It used to, people would move around to a lot of different accounts. There's not relocation like there used to be. There's still some relocation, but not nearly to the degree it was. And people would get experience on different accounts and come in, but it's too fast paced to jump into these big accounts and try to learn. And so it's, if you know the Walmart business, it's good to keep that experience and knowledge and hire people with that versus bring somebody in with an important role and mess up for 6 to 12 months. And so now you got that. Now you got all these touch points. So I don't know where you get it all, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah, no, it's interesting for me from my lens of having been a buyer is I know that it turned out buying was not for everybody, and I didn't stop to think, well, on the supplier teams it might be exactly the way that this may not be for everybody because of the challenge, of the pressure of being on a world-class team is not easy, right?
All the time. I'd like to be in sales. Okay, do you know what sales is? Got my story about what I thought a stockbroker was. It's okay. Well, you got to be analytical first, and you got to be fact-based in your selling. Yeah, and they want to skip. They want to be a salesperson. They want to meet and talk and say, hey, you should buy this product because, or you like this flavor because. So it's there's a lot of education sometimes for somebody what they think the job is versus when they get it and they do it. Yeah. And a lot of people that feel like they're sales minded are not analytical minded, and so it's a hard lesson to learn.
It sounds like it, and that kind of leads me to the last question I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on is as you have candidates sitting in front of you contemplating where they want to go with their career. Is there any advice that you would give, particularly here in our market here in Northwest Arkansas, on how to best prepare for supporting and working with Walmart and Sam's Club, or even retailers in the broader context? What kind of advice do you give to candidates on how to be prepared and how to grow their career in being part of a supplier team?
It's you need to be focused. You need to be committed to working hard. And to the points of academia, you need to always be a learner, and you need to stay on top of the trends, the technologies, and try to be the best at something in your office within some function. If you're on a basketball team, every team needs a rebounder.
Yeah.
Somebody needs a shooter, but not everybody has to be a shooter if you can pass and rebound and play defense. And so try to become the best at something within your office, and whether that's a replenishment or whether that's a certain function of learning e-commerce or learning Illuminate. But if you can continue and seek to be really strong at something, I think you'll always have a place. And just continue to grow yourself, be patient in your expectations, and that'd probably be the advice I would give to people, and just look at it as a long-term thing and not a short-term situation. And when it comes to jobs and companies, there's not one that's perfect. There's going to be problems everywhere you go, and those things work themselves out a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so just trust the process, do what you can, and don't look for perfection or expect too much out of yourself, and just keep moving forward and look back, and you're going to have had a great career.
That's awesome. One of the things I really enjoyed about my own career retailing was the rapid pace of change, of new challenges always coming down the road. And I'm the type that really enjoys challenge and change, and retailing, it feels like across a number of different roles, and not just within the retailer in my case, but it sounds like in the supplier community as well. They always provide you great opportunities as a professional, but you've got to be kind of willing to commit yourself to it sounds like. And our conversation today kind of reminds us that being part of this community, the bar has kind of been raised, if you will. And just like retailers, the supplier community, they have to continue to redefine what the ideal team is, and what the ideal skill sets on those teams are, the ideal structure in what is a pretty fast-paced and rapidly changing world. Scott, would you agree with that?
Everybody's working through it at the same time. They don't have solutions. There's not a plan. It's like, hey, this is what the team should look like. This is what this role should look like. Everybody's taking off little bits and chunks, and they're building a job. Yep. Each company's building different types of jobs or different utilizations of it, and they're kind of redefining it as they go. I haven't come across anybody who has and says with confidence that, hey, this is what our e-commerce person
We've got it figured out.
This is what we're doing with Illuminate. This is how it's better for us. This is what the right head count or the right role, or how do we split up these different tasks. Everybody's in each company is a little different now. There's what tools they use and how they report in, and so there's not one roadmap you can look at and say this is the right way and this is completely the best in class.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you, everybody is still evolving and figuring that out together, and that's why just listening to people talk, being part of the Walmart Wall Street Speaker Series, going to those events, going to there's a lot of them doing business with Benville's. There's a lot of different places that you can just listen and figure out how others are doing it, and take that and kind of take what you like and use what you like and disregard what you don't. And that's what's going on right now as everything evolves faster than people can put together a plan.
Awesome. Scott, really enjoyed this conversation. I thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your insights on this topic, and really enjoyed having you with us today. So thank you for that.
And thank you, Scott. Really appreciate you.
You bet. So I want to thank you, Scott, for joining us. I want to thank our audience for listening. And so until next time, I'm Scott Benedict. Have a great day.